Hey guys, here on quarantine again, as many of you are, I'm sure. For those of you who watch this video sometime in the future, hopefully not too far in the future, during the month of March at a minimum, a lot of the United States and large portions of the world were pretty much told to stay inside their homes and practice social distancing to the best of their abilities um, to help spread the or help prevent the spread of the coronavirus, which is an interesting introduction to the topic that I want to speak on today. It's vaccinations. So, first, a short history. The history of vaccines is kind of cool. Um, the disease that really brought vaccines as an invention to the forefront was smallpox. There's a number of different lines and stories that led into it, but the short and dirty version is that dairy maids were often known for having very smooth skin because they had not gotten smallpox, and some people wondered why. Turns out that cows actually had a closely related version of the disease called cowpox on their udders. The dairy maids would get exposed to a closely related version, but weaker version of the disease, and then they were immune to smallpox. And so, some smarter people thought, well, if you can expose someone to a weaker version of the disease and then make them immune to the stronger disease, couldn't we just take a little bit of the disease and expose it to lots of other people? And so that's exactly what they did. They would take pus from the disease itself and they would insert it into people, giving them an immunity. See, what a vaccine does is it exposes you to a weak or small amount of the virus, and then your body develops antibodies and other ways to fight off the full virus quickly if you are ever exposed to it. That's all a vaccine is it's an exposure to the virus in a small form, typically dead and inert, such that you can't get sick, but then your body learns how to defend against it and you're immune. Pretty much all a vaccine is. We call them vaccinations based on the Latin name for cow, vacca. Um, there's your history for the day. The next point that I want to make is that vaccines are almost entirely safe and effective. Now, I say almost entirely because nothing is without risk and nothing is 100% effective. Um, a cliched analogy, but a very good one nonetheless, is that vaccines are a lot like seatbelts. Seatbelts work most of the time, and seatbelts are very safe. Seatbelts are not 100% safe, however. Seatbelts can cause deaths in incidents that you otherwise would have survived. These are very rare incidents, probably less than one in a million car accidents, but there are cases where if you hadn't worn a seatbelt, you would have survived. You wore a seatbelt and it killed you. That happens, but we still wear seatbelts. Why? Because they're safe in 99.9% of the cases. It's the same with vaccines, although vaccines are probably even safer than seatbelts in the sense that they are 99.999% safe. There are small risks, and they are not 100% effective, especially with constantly changing viruses like the flu virus that is morphing literally on a monthly basis. It's a lot harder to pin down the flu virus in terms of what it is, and thus it's harder to create a fully effective vaccine. Having said that, vaccines have saved literally hundreds of millions of lives. It's a little bit difficult to estimate, but it might be in the billions at this point. We have wiped out innumerable diseases that some of you haven't even heard of or have only read about in history books. Pertussis, typhoid fever, smallpox, polio. These things ravaged humanity for centuries, sometimes millennia. There would be years where, a fifth or a quarter of the entire population of your country could have been wiped out by a single one of these diseases. And there was basically nothing you could do about it. We didn't even know what was causing the problem. It killed hundreds of millions of people and would have continued to kill hundreds of millions of people were it not for vaccinations. In fact, after water treatment and water sanitation, vaccinations are probably responsible for saving more lives than any other invention, activity, or effort in all of human history. I give them second place. I think that water treatment and water sanitation get first place for that. But the combination of those two have saved hundreds of millions to billions of lives. Now, some of you might be asking, how do I know that they're safe and effective? Aren't you just placing faith in government groups? No, I'm not. It is true that the government has performed a number of peer-reviewed studies to prove the safety and efficacy of vaccines, and that those tests have been very well vetted. Having said that, there are also a lot of international and national watchdog groups that their entire purpose is just to look over the shoulder of these government agencies and say, hey, are you doing honest work? Are your studies working? Are they properly vetted? Do they have sound methodology? Um, and are they proving what you're claiming to prove? Literally, their entire purpose is to call out the government for having bad studies or lying about their studies if they do. All of these watchdog groups have conclusively found that vaccines are safe and effective based on doing independent studies that have no connection to the government through funding or directly, and based on vetting the studies from the government. So even if you have no faith in the government at all, you should think that vaccines are safe and effective because other groups have proven this to be so. You don't have to trust the government to conclude that. And to contrast that, there are no accepted peer-reviewed studies that show that vaccines are dangerous or ineffective in more than mild cases. None. There was one study that caused a lot of panic in our population by Andrew Wakefield, where he allegedly showed a connection between vaccines and autism. That study has since been debunked. Its peer-reviewed status has been rebuked. Was already successfully sued, and he may lose all of his professional credentials, including his college degree and medical licenses. That's how big of a screw up that was. That is the only study that ever showed something like a major adverse effect being connected to vaccines in more than extremely rare populations. And the study has been fully debunked, like numerous times. There's no credence to the study whatsoever. Now, if you peruse enough anti-vaccine groups, people that are skeptical or deny the safety and efficacy of vaccines, you will inevitably come across a topic called VAERS. The acronym is VAERS, or Vaccine Adverse. What is that acronym? Anyways, I'll post the acronym later. Vaccine Adverse Effect Group or something. Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. That's it. It always escapes me. And they will say, look, this was set up specifically to pay families that have been damaged by vaccines, and they have paid out. So what's up with that? If vaccines are safe and effective, why has VAERS paid out people? Two major responses to that. Response number one, VAERS self-admittedly does not require conclusive evidence that the person was hurt by the vaccine to pay out. They don't. It's not a court in the sense of a criminal court where you have to actually have evidence of the crime to pay out to the victim. They do not require conclusive evidence for that. Secondly, while their payouts sound like a large amount, when you think about the fact that millions and millions of Americans are vaccinated every single year, and that these payouts are huge per individual, and they've only paid out a handful of $1 million, you start to realize that they actually haven't paid that many individuals. Very few individuals have been paid by VAERS relative to the number of people that have been vaccinated. In fact, it's on the order of less than 0.00001%. And that's people including those that didn't have conclusive evidence to prove that they were harmed by the vaccine. And so VAERS is almost a testament to just how safe vaccines really are. Again, 100% safe? No. 1 out of every 5 million people might have an adverse reaction. Most of these adverse reactions are not lifelong or death. They are usually relatively short and relatively mild, but they do happen. They're just extremely rare. And VAERS, their relatively small payout, given that tens of millions of people have been vaccinated just in the past half decade, is a testament to just how safe vaccines are. I could probably post some links if anyone here is curious. It seems like most of the people that have watched these so far are generally not skeptical of the claims that I make, but if you are, I'm more than happy to post some links to the peer-reviewed studies. In fact, I'll just go ahead and do that at some point anyways. Um, oh, one other thing. Every now and then you will hear anti-vaxxers make a claim along the lines of there have never been any double-blind peer-reviewed studies on the safety of vaccines. 100% false. In fact, not only is it false, but there have been dozens. It's not even particularly hard to find many double-blind safety studies on the CDC recommended vaccination schedule. Vaccines save lives. Even today, when we don't struggle with diseases like smallpox or polio, because vaccines wipe them out, there are still diseases that kill thousands to hundreds of thousands of people globally every year, like the measles or rubella, hepatitis B, and they're vaccine preventable. One of the reasons that we don't see people dying in the streets every day because of these diseases is because vaccines work so well. Be happy to further this discussion or even make another video. There's a lot of details in here, and I tried to make it less than 10 minutes, and I didn't even succeed in that. Let's wrap it up there for now.